Hi guys, welcome back to CSM. And I'm Jamie here again, and this time I'm going to show you a little exercise we like to teach here called the Moonwalk for your right hand finger picking exercise. First of all, I want to talk about how to get into the right hand position. Okay, I have two ways I like to use. Sometimes I teach them both, sometimes I just teach the one. Depends on which one is going to work the best. The first one I like to teach is what I call the arm out method. All right, you simply stick your arm straight out in front of you. Make a fist. You want to take your thumb, stick it out to the side. Relax your fingers, just let them dangle. Let your wrist drop, just let it hang. Come over, put your thumb on the low E string. Then put your fingers on the G, B, and E string so that your index finger is right at the bottom of the rosette. The rosette is this decorative circle that circles our sound hole. Okay, the other way I teach has a few more steps to it, but it also works really well. You drop your right arm to the side, make a fist. You're going to come over the top of the guitar just as you normally would, this time putting the flat part of your knuckles right here on the treble strings. Again, so that your index finger is right at the bottom of the rosette. You want to take your thumb and move it up so that it rests between the E and A string. You want to take your index finger, put it on the G string, middle finger, put it on the B string, A finger, put it on the high E string. Then from here, you just do a little push-up with your fingers. Alright, and you end up with just about the same hand position, or should be the same hand position. Take notice that my thumb is in front of my fingers. Alright, you don't want this. Okay, if you do that, you're going to smash into your index finger and one of these notes won't come out. Okay. You also want to be sure that your wrist is straight from your forearm through to your fingers. You don't want to bend like this. This is an older, out-of-date way of playing that leads to carpal tunnel and a lot of other problems. Also, you don't want to be playing with a flat wrist either for the same reasons. Okay. So this is a side view of what it looks like when the flat part of your knuckles are resting against the treble strings, just like this. All right. My index finger is right at the beginning of the rosette, or the bottom of the rosette, however you want to look at it. Thumb just scrapes up from the side, rests between the E and A string, or you can rest it on the E string, whichever is the most comfortable for you. Then you want to take your fingertips, and don't push up yet, but just take the tip of your finger and put it on the G string. Your middle finger will go on the B string, and your A finger will go on the high E string. Now from here, you just want to do a little bit of a push-up with your fingertips. While you're in the right hand position, it's really good to have a mirror in front of you or have someone looking at you. A couple things you want to watch for is that the wrist is going to be straight from your forearm, your elbow, all the way through to your fingers. You want a straight line of traffic right here, okay? All the muscles that move your fingers start up in the forearm, all right? So if there's a bad bend like this older style playing, this is going to cause a lot of tension and give you a lot of grief while you're playing, not to mention the tone is pretty bad. All right. You also want to be careful that you're not playing with a flat wrist, all right, for all the same reasons I just said. This is also a good way to develop tension and give you a really bad tone. Students will tend to pop the strings like that. It's no good. The other thing you're going to watch for is that the thumb is out in front of your index finger. You don't want your thumb and index finger to be lined up like that. All right. You want it to be slightly out in front. In fact, if you look down, you'll see a little triangle of space between the thumb and the index finger. You don't want them on top of each other like this. So the moonwalk exercise is a really important exercise we teach all of our students here. It's a really good exercise so that students can concentrate on the right hand alone. Okay, the right hand is responsible for producing the sound, stopping the notes, the rhythm, the dynamics, everything, a lot more than the left hand. So it's really important that we get this right. We have a joke that there's a million ways to do it wrong and really only one way to do it right. All right, and once you learn it wrong, it's very hard to fix. So the more time your student can spend doing this exercise, concentrating on the correct way of playing, the better. What I like about it too is that I call it TV practice. It's practice that you don't have to have your head in a book. You don't have to be, stressing about hitting right notes. You're simply just plucking the strings, making sure you're making contact at the same spot every time, alternating your fingers correctly. Okay? So to start, from your starting position, All right, I want you to start with your middle finger on the first string. All right, and the exercise simply goes like this. You can do it in quarter notes, you can do it in eighth notes, you can do it on a combination of quarter notes and eighth notes. You can stay on one string, you can alternate strings depending on your level. So simply it goes like this. I'm going to start with just quarter notes for now. Starting with my middle finger, alternating with my index. And that's more or less it. One thing you want to watch out for, and this is also the reason why we don't want to start too soon with fingernails, is that if you look closely, I'm not striking with my fingernail like that. You can really hear the difference there. I'm touching the flesh of my finger first, and then the string is leaving my nail. The actual nail never alone causes the sound. It's always a combination of the flesh and the finger that gives us that really smooth sound that you got to go for. So it's very important while you're doing this exercise to make sure that you're hitting that same exact spot on the finger every single time. Okay? You want to avoid anything that might sound like that. Alright, that sound is an indication that you're touching the nail first to the string and not the flesh. It gives you that zap that is really unpleasant. Okay? Also, use the time to really exaggerate your finger movement. If you exaggerate the finger movement, you're more likely to alternate instinctively rather than having to purposely think about alternating the fingers. Okay? For more advanced students, you may want to take the time with this exercise and maybe work on one finger at a time, especially the A finger. Because the A fingernail is usually a different shape than the other two, it requires a little bit more thought about where you're actually placing that A finger. Right. Oftentimes students will do that, hitting mostly nail again, and that'll be a big discrepancy in the sound between your index and middle and the ring finger, the A finger. Okay, so I like to keep it just with the first three strings initially. As you get more advanced, you can move to the lower strings. Remember, when you go to the bass strings, you are going to have to deviate the wrist downwards a little bit. One thing you want to avoid on the bass strings when you're plucking is that scrape, that sound. What has to happen as you move to the bass strings is that the wrist actually has to turn in a little bit. We have to break our technique rule slightly, only enough to get that sound and not our scrape sound. Alright, that's for a more advanced student. I'll have another exercise for that later on. But for now, the moonwalk exercise, your imagination is your limit. Use different finger combinations, try different rhythms, and just enjoy it. And put a movie on Netflix, and you get a good couple hours of practice out of it. Also, while you're using the rest stroke, remember the rest stroke is where your finger comes through and rests on the adjacent string. While you're doing this, you want to make sure that the movement is initiated from the large knuckle joint right here. All right, this knuckle joint is controlled by the muscles up here in your forearm. So you're going to have a much larger reserve of power and just more stamina. Larger muscles have a lot more stamina, so you can play longer. If you're doing a free stroke, which is the opposite of a rest stroke, you'll have a little bit more play in the middle joint here. Alright? But not too much. Most of the force still comes from your larger knuckle. Alright, you can see the difference. See, I had a little more movement in my middle knuckle. If I do the rest stroke, there's no movement in that middle knuckle. Okay? Always be paying attention to your sound. Remember, if your notes sound bad, then no one's really going to want to listen to you. Doesn't matter how fast or how flashy you can play. If your tone is bad, you're already starting on the wrong foot. The tip joint, you want to make sure that there's a bit of rigid flexibility in the tip joint. You don't want to force it to stay completely solid, otherwise you're going to develop too much tension and you're not going to be very comfortable. But what happens is if you let that tip joint flex in on itself like this, not only is it going to be not such a great sound all the time, but it's going to cause a delay in the time it takes you to pluck the string to when it's released. If you see what I'm doing here, I'm letting that joint collapse on purpose. See, this is where the note should be produced. Instead it's being delayed there. Now if I keep this tip joint a little bit rigid, boom, the note's coming out exactly when I want it to, and not a half second later. Right. Another thing to pay attention to, which is really kind of hard, but because it hides behind all the other fingers, is the pinky. If you see what the pinky is doing right now, you don't want to do this, all right? Your pinky wants to move with the rest of the fingers, all right? The pinky sticking out or the pinky kind of curling up into itself is a good sign that the student's playing with way too much tension and needs to relax. You want the pinky to kind of move along with the A finger, almost touching it. It won't get in the way. It may feel like it's going to be in the way, but because the pinky is so much shorter, it's not going to interfere with the other strings. So you want to try and keep that moving along. You see when I'm plucking my A finger, it just stays right there with the A finger. It doesn't stick straight out.